let's see. Okay, so we're live there. Let me just make sure that this side is working. YouTube. Hey guys, if anybody's hanging out in chat so far, I'm just live here with my good friend Nick. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Just doing the last final checks and getting up and running before we kick off this live taping of episode 33 of One with the Films, which I'm really excited for. Crazy film, this one. Chat so okay. That's running. I'm just live here with make sure I can actually hear this first. What I wanted to do. There we go. Just doing the last final checks and getting up and running before we kick off this live taping of episode 33 of One with the Films. Yep, that's working. All right. Sorry, guys. Let me mute that and play. Okay. That is on. I think we're good. Okay. So, yeah, welcome to the live taping of episode 33 of One with the Films. I'm going to kick us off with an intro. Now, Keegan's not here, so you'll have to forgive me for not being as good at it as he is.
I will just say quickly, his intro last episode, that was something else, my guy.
Right? He just...
Crazy.
I don't know how he does it. He just keeps coming up with wild shit, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just, like, look like a failure again. It's all good. All right, so... Can you tell me your name? Are you from Earth? Hey, it wasn't a question, it was rhetorical. No, you're okay. All right. Can you tell me your name? Are you from Earth? What I'm about to tell you, you might find disturbing. And due to circumstances surrounding your condition, I'm afraid that our information is extremely limited. Can you recall for me the first time you encountered the signal? Chances are you didn't. And if you're yet to, well, we should have a chat about that. My dear co-host, a man I love more than life itself, the movie man with a plan and opinions in his hands, he's been taken. I, alone, am left to disappoint your desire for sexy, snappy intros, but if you liked the uniqueness of my Down Under vibe, well then I have pretty good news for you. I had to wrestle him off a dingo, but a fellow Aussie has jumped on his pet kangaroo and rode all the way to One with the Films and brought along a wild film with him. My friend Nick, also known as Dreamscape Visuals, is a man with a particular set of skills. Those skills involve perfect frame composition, lightning fast editing skills, drone piloting expertise, and the most peculiar taste in films. Hey Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, man.
That's
I'm very
good.
excited to be here. Very excited to share some of my weird and wonderful films with you guys. So.
Yeah, I told you to get me something weird. You did not disappoint. So
yes, there was one that I've been sitting on for a while, so I'm glad that I can talk about it and unpack it because it's a bit of an old school one. So
for sure it is. Yeah, like it's wild that you have to say that now about a film from 2014, but like here we are 10 years later.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man. But we'll talk about the film that we're going into in just a sec. But for the uninitiated, today we're doing an episode of One with the Films, one of our segments called the Weekly Watch List. And that's where usually Kay and I force each other and you guys to watch one of our personal favourite films. So the goal being to introduce one another to something new. Well, new to us, I suppose. And then generally we hope that it's something that's new to you guys as well. But from time to time, we have guests come on. Sometimes they're a fill-in co-host, like Nick has the, what's the word? The pleasure of being for us today. And then sometimes it's the three of us as well. And we get to have something that we've never seen before generally, or that somebody hasn't seen, introduced to us, which was the case today. So yeah, if you guys like getting weird recommendations of films and having new stuff to check out, then this is a really good place to be. You can find One with the Films anywhere you find your podcasts, so on Spotify, Apple Music, and basically everywhere else. And these live streams are available to view on demand on YouTube afterwards as well if you like seeing our pretty faces. You can also follow One with the Films on like Instagram and TikTok and all of those other places if you like our vibe. We've got a lot of content across all of those platforms for you. But as is the case, we'll go ahead and talk about the film of the week, right? So you've actually brought this film for me, Nick, and it was a bit hard for me to find, so you actually provided a version I could watch as well. It was a tough one to find, but why don't you tell me what the name of the film is and a little bit on why you brought it here?
So the name is The Signal. It is a science fiction, and it's crazy to say, like it's become a bit of a cult classic now. Because we were just talking about it's only 10 years old. But yeah, it's a bit of a hard one to find. It wasn't the most successful film, but it has a band of crazy people surrounding it. If you want to
I
dive
know
into
one
the
of them.
road if you want to dive into the rabbit hole of Reddit, it is awesome to just hear people talk about this
Mm,
film. And that's something that I just love is that people that I've never even spoken to, I can sit online and just read their thoughts and then see these comments. And if you ever want to, you can type in and just be like, hey, this is a theory that I have about this film.
yeah.
And even to this day, before jumping on, checked it out, and there's still people from 6 months ago, 4 months ago, typing about this film. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's
Um,
definitely something that's going to promote a lot of discussion. And like I said, well, basically, I've got some fun facts on the film that we'll go into as well because yeah, the reception on it is a little bit mixed.
yep.
Yeah, but what I might do is let's jump into some fun facts on the film quickly, and then we'll dive into a bit of a conversation about it. Released in 2014 on a $4 million budget, this film only brought back in 2.4 million, meaning it probably won't get that sequel it so desperately needs, which we'll talk about when we get to the ending conversations. It had a pretty mixed reception. Its average rating on IMDb is 6 out of 10 and 2.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd. However, parties on both sides, as you were saying, are really passionate about their feelings either way. I noticed some people hate this with a passion, others love it with a passion. Honestly, I love that kind of stuff. So I'm here for it. It was written and directed by William Eubank, who was a former cinematographer. So one of the standout things in the film is the cinematography, and goes to show why. There was no doubt the film was going to be shot incredibly well. It's starring Laurence Fishburne, Brenton Thwaites, I believe a fellow Aussie Brenton Thwaites is.
That's right.
Olivia Cooke, technically, though she doesn't have heaps of screen time. And also a discount Roofing Man opinions, which you guys will get if you watch the film and have seen our faces before. But you are in for a pretty wild ride with this film. It's a sci-fi thriller set in the modern era and features a cast of characters under observation after coming in contact with extraterrestrial life forms. At an hour 37, it's not a crazy long film, but it is packed to the rafters with twists, turns, misdirections, and creepy, creepy old people. My favorite. So going into this film, I had no concept that it existed, which is one of my favorite things to say every time I come onto the podcast. If I get to see something that I had no concept of and can go in completely blind, wicked. And that was very much the case with this. I had no knowledge at all. What's your relationship to this film, Nick? How did you uh, find out about it? When did you watch it for the first time? What knowledge did you have going into it as well?
Oh, I probably found this film probably close to 9 years ago. It was
Yep.
probably just after it had came out. I actually don't remember if it got a release in Australia. Something I would probably have to have a look at.
Okay.
I don't know if it ever came to cinema. And it was one because I'd heard I was going down the rabbit hole of science fiction, and I was just literally searching through like good science fiction that had just come out, and it kind of popped up as this mediocre type of film. It had won a few awards. Sure, it won some few awards, or it was his the movie beforehand, Moon, that
Okay.
he's directed, had won some awards. So I was like, oh,
Is that a
kind of
sci-fi film or?
yes.
Okay, cool.
So it spiked my radar, and I ended up being able to pick it up. I ended up getting it online and just got a Blu-ray version of it,
Yeah.
and just to add to my collection because I was like, this looks cool,
Mhm.
and then automatically fell in love with it, and then some of the characters with it,
Yeah.
and it's been really, really cool because like talking about Olivia Cooke, she's been in some of my other great like films that I've quite enjoyed.
Yeah.
So seeing her from this and then progress through the years. But it was yeah, probably about 9 years ago. Stumbled across it because I was just bored and trying to find cool science fiction. And back then there wasn't a huge amount of like really good science fiction coming out. There was weird and wonderful fine science fiction, but it was hard as a science fiction lover to really grasp onto things. So yeah.
Cool. That's yeah, so like the fact that it was so hard to find here as well is one of the things that I found really interesting. Like it just doesn't exist here. Which is just the wildest thing. I found a couple of places that like said I could rent it, but I was trying to use a VPN and all of this other stuff to just get on board and it was tough. It was
Yeah.
tough. That being said, once I did get into it, it is pretty wild. And we've got a few things here that I think will be really good to talk about. I know you've got a couple of talking points, and I got some as well that I want to touch on. But I'd love to kick off with yourself. I know that you are a big camera guy as well. There's a video and photos. So there's no doubt that you're probably going to have some thoughts on the camera work here and the cinematography too. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
So the main thing for me taken away is, and we'll talk about this as well a little bit with the vibe, but I do want to focus on the cinematography because the first 20 minutes of this film is just something completely different. It is just to me really, really well shot, and just really, really well paced. I felt it gave the film a lot of time to breathe. There was a lot of shots that kind of held, really showed these characters, and even though there wasn't a lot going on storytelling wise in that first bit, I really felt that I connected with these three characters.
Yeah.
One being Nick, same name as me, and he's the main character that you'll follow. And you can kind of see his struggles, as simple as spilling some coffee and
Mm.
being this awkward guy that's trying to navigate some life challenges and how he does that with his best mate and his girlfriend. But without that being showed, it was these shots that really set this road trip. And you could just picture it in your head even after that first 20 minutes of these just really nice slow shots, folding, showing the scenery, cutting back. And to me, it was like really, really gorgeous to watch.
Mm.
But then just completely surprising when this after that 20 minutes, the film completely shifts. You still notice that it will hold shots quite well that I really like in films. I find filmmaking these days, there's a lot of like quick cuts and
Yep.
a lot of action, and um, some people are just afraid to hold for that extra 2-3 seconds
Mhm.
on this shot that they might not need to.
Which you can
But
kind
yeah,
of
that
get, I suppose, because it means that you're able to take smaller sequences from multiple shots and tie stuff together, and it's like
yeah,
cool. But there is something. That's why all of us like kind of film bros get obsessed when there's like a long take, because you just kind of like it just feels right. It feels real. It feels like I'm connected to it because I know that like it's actually happening. And whether that's in terms of just something as simple as a conversation or actual yeah, like moments that they're trying to capture, there's no doubt that it does kind of resonate with you a little bit more when it's not kind of like chopped up in the edit, you know?
yeah,
And we were talking last week about how, for example, the editing in past lives just kind of blended away. You know, that's the perfect edit is when you don't even realize it's happening. And often in particularly action sequences and films like this, you do get a lot of that lately. So it's definitely a really good call. And I like what you were saying about how at the start of the film, it's almost setting up something completely different. It's setting up a road trip film. Like if it
yeah.
didn't actually go the direction it did, and it was just a road trip film, I wouldn't have been shocked. Um,
Mhm.
it does really uh, similar to like what it does for his camera for its characters is like shatter that perception of reality, I suppose. And before we do continue and dive into some more like the story elements as well, I'll just let you guys know if you're listening, with our conversations around the films here, we don't necessarily do a full start to finish breakdown of it, but our conversations are based in the knowledge that you either have seen the film or you're okay with spoilers. So full spoiler warning here. This film does have a few big moments that you may enjoy a little bit more if you go in blind. That being said, as always, you can obviously check out the episode beforehand and hopefully see the movie afterwards and let us know what you think. But if you prefer to wait until after you've seen it, then like we said, all episodes are available on demand and stuff too. Um, so I like how early in the film there's lots of what's it called? Lots of character beats that come in camera. You know,
Mhm.
you often have those scenarios where you're trying to explain to me consistently why you're so smart, um, and I like how the very first shot of the film is teaching us a little bit about Nick. Uh, one, you know, just his character, the kind of person that he is, and he's caring for people who aren't as um what's the word I was gonna say as strong, but I understand obviously he's got the makings of like a disability in this film, and it's not really clear what it's come from, but it seems like some kind of neurological, like an ALS or something like that, that he's in the early stages of.
Mhm.
Especially because they do talk about how he would run previously and then now he
Yeah,
can't. So that stuff was
yeah.
pretty heartbreaking. Um, But I love seeing how he goes over to this kid who's just struggling, just shows him the math real quick with the whiteboard marker, like, and goes, there you go, there you go. Oh, and by the way, here's $1. Do it. It's a nice way to. It's very much a save the cat moment,
Yeah.
to endear you to him early on.
Yeah.
And it's really wild how it kind of like evolves from its little road trip film at the start, into this almost like found footage film for a little bit as we're starting to unravel those where are we going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a little bit like my heart rate was picking up a bit in that sequence when they get to the hut for the first time, and
Yeah.
especially when his mate's sitting in the chair and like kind of scares him. I was like, you got me there. And there are a few other moments in the film that kind of do the same thing, but I found it really interesting how early on, there's some stuff that's handheld and it's just following our characters around, and there's all these crazy little things, and we're going to catch this guy, catch that guy, and then once you move to being in the compound, everything becomes very static.
Yeah.
And there's lots of wides, and it is very much, it's almost a shock to the senses that the cinematography's changed so much, and also that we had these beautiful landscapes around before, and now all of a sudden it's white rooms, guy in white hazmat suit, white guy. I'm kidding.
It's like one thing I love talking about that is going from these handheld shots that, like, as you say, you're on this road trip as well. Even that was more of a handheld shot, even though it wasn't. So if it's setting up that scene and you see those clouds rolling over, it's got that slight sway in the camera movement. But then when you're showing off these settings in this compound, it's just static shots.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's someone there kind of going on this trip. It's just like you see this big compound in front of you. You're seeing these certain things, and it goes to a completely different feel in that cinematography style. As simple as just slightly changing how that progression happens, but it does make you feel more kind of on edge. I feel the start of the film is very like inviting. It feels very warm. It feels something like you could be watching on YouTube, and you're watching someone who's like, "Oh, this is my road trip around the US," and you're like, "Oh, this is cool. I've got some time to spare. I'll watch this." And then you're just taken into this now. Where am I? What is this compound? What is going on?
Yeah.
Why is there people running around in suits? Why does it seem like this place is a full-on facility that you can't get in or can't get out of, and they're not telling things that are supposed to be done? And it was a really interesting, because I feel like a lot of that was done just in that cinematography, like seeing how that happens as well, um, gave a lot of strength to the film as well. So.
Yeah, I think that definitely is one of the things that it does really well, and adding to that, you've got that once we move into the compound, all of the story is coming from the perspective of Nick, who knows nothing, and we know nothing. So we're getting these little crumbs as he's getting them, and I love how it kind of prompts you to question what he thinks is real or not. Like, particularly in that moment where Laurence Fishburne's character is, what's his name? Nomad, is saying, you talk to him through the vent. And I was like, oh, God. Because I did actually have the feeling that it wasn't him. Yeah, but I have questions on your interpretation of some of those scenes as well, because it does feel like I was like, okay, I guess it's not him. He's just talking to himself or whatever. And then at the end, obviously, they do find their friend outside. And I'm like, okay, so was it actually him? And you did help him get out, and he was there? Or did he just get out another time, and it's got nothing to do with you? What's your take on those things?
So it's going on from that. There's so much with that where they try to trick you. And it's mainly like going from that horror with that first vibe. And then you get Laurence Fishburne coming back, and he's like, paused footage that they have now grabbed from that handheld, and they're showing him this alien, and you're like, okay, like this is making sense, this is adding up in my storyline.
Nick's reaction to that as well was the same as mine. I was like, oh no, thank you, nope.
You're feeling for this, and he's really selling this narrative that at the end is just kind of like an illusion, that to me is like such a trippy thing to feel, because you start feeling for Nick, you start feeling for this situation, but you also start feeling for like Laurence Fishburne. He's there, he's trying to do this best thing that he can. He's like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I'm giving you the information when I can. This is news for us. We just want to keep you safe. We want to protect you. And you're like starting to get a bit frustrated with Nick at points when he's been a little bit more standoffish. But you understand that frustration as well. So it's like it's a very interesting way of storytelling to me because it's like you said, it's giving you those little crumbs, and you have to kind of fill in these gaps, and you do start feeling for these characters, but it doesn't really, to me, build on anything more than kind of this illusion of a place or
Yeah.
these types of characters that feel real but also don't feel real.
Mm.
You could really dive into different narrative beats and go, like talking about that whole vent situation, is that you could say that that is 100% true, that he was talking to him in the vent. And there's so many people that go, yes, that was true. He was trying to help him. And then other people go, no, it wasn't. That was recordings. It was all timed and it was all placed to get him to do certain aspects. Um, so I find that very interesting when films allow that, but also it can be just frustrating for the viewer, and I can see
Yeah.
that as well. Because one thing talking about that is when it first came out, there was that talk of people leaving the cinema. They were just getting up and just being like,
Really?
"I'm not, I'm not intrigued with this. This isn't what I expected," and people leaving. That is a bit crazy to hear, but once you see the trailer and you do that type of thing, you dive into it. It is a very different film to kind of what you get once you've seen it. So it is
Yeah.
it is very very interesting with how they did that. So
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. And it's like it's one of those things that's kind of difficult to balance, you know? So when you have like an annoying character in a sitcom and you are annoyed by them, but you kind of have to be like endeared by them at the same time as well. And I think it is something that is going to resonate with different people differently. Like I was very much in Nick's camp and I wanted to know, and I felt for him when he was frustrated. I felt when I would look at Laurence Fishburne's character at Nomad, and I felt the frustration where I was like, you could just say. But then at the same time, when he does find out, for example, that reveal with the legs, I thought,
yeah,
I get it. He's like, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, how could we? I was like, it almost made me think, oh, they are the good guys. They are trying to help. There is something kind of bigger at play,
yeah,
which I thought was really cool. But I want to talk a little bit about the visual effects of the film as well. I don't really want something that we kind of had there, but I want to talk a little bit about the visual effects, and then we'll dive into some more of like the storytelling style,
yep.
that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Visual effects are used quite sparingly in this film, and you can tell in particular with, for example, Nick's legs, where they tried to save some money in the budget. So remember, we've got a $4 million budget here. We did last week's Past Lives, I believe, was about a $14 million budget. Um,
Yep.
the week before that, what's it called? Hell or High Water was a $12 million budget. So like Hell or High Water that has no like visual effects shots. Well, again, it will have visual effects shots as everything always does, but no specific CGI legs replacement. Like none of that cost 15 million, and they got this made for. And I would argue that the CGI looks pretty damn good.
Yeah. Mainly when we are talking about this is a 10-year-old film,
Mm.
and that technology back then could have been a little bit harder to come by and could have cost a little bit more depending on how they did it. But I felt it was amazing once you got these characters and you were seeing how it was done. It felt very. It felt like it was that like really unsettling feeling once you see that reveal.
Yeah, his
And he was
reaction's
like,
great.
yeah, absolutely great. But it felt like it's like that whole thing of like even weathering the shoes and him trying to cover it. It was like this scary, like it didn't feel real that
Yeah,
he had these fake legs, but also like you're seeing them and it's like this alien thing. But it was just like the full disgust with him, like covering them up, trying to hide them. He didn't want to see this. This isn't
yeah,
something that he wanted. Um, but yeah, the visual effects throughout the film, I felt when they used it. Really, really helped show that more science fiction over the topness that they were trying to go for.
yeah.
Even later in the film, when we had, it was like it was kind of crazy. The really slow motion, like him. I forget the friend's name now. Gone.
Smoothie
Blank.
man.
Yeah.
But when he does
Um,
the whole like hand slam thing and
yeah.
all that
Yeah.
stuff is awesome.
Yeah, and it
Um,
was really, really well done. Really isolated to areas that just made it believable. And I think the setting really helped with that. It wasn't like we were in a massive city or something like that where you've got everything. Like they're in these deserts, so it was really easy to have that feeling. Probably lower areas to do it. And I feel like they nailed that. I feel like they really, really
absolutely.
nailed it throughout. So it was really, yeah, it was really impressive to see. I feel
Yeah,
like very much get two different films with this, or even to me, I felt like three different films at one point,
agreed.
with those horror aspects as
Mhm.
well, because they did nail that. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I totally get what you mean there, and I found it really interesting how things like when Nick is reacting to his legs, there's a lot of shots that are focused more on him than what's actually happening with the legs, and
mhm,
it's in the sound effects. They use that to bring it to life. But it very much reminds me of, you would have seen District 9, right?
yeah,
People always talk about how like District 9 CGI looks so good, and then other things like don't. They look so realistic and they kind of fit there. And one of the common consensus there is it's because it's simple. Like
mhm,
they're really like if you break down like the design of the prawns, they're essentially like a wireframe of a human. Like it's simple, and you can
mhm,
see that in particularly how they designed Nick's legs too. That they are a very simple design, hard lines, polygons. Like
yeah,
they've
Polygon.
done that intentionally. And then you also have the added story element of him being disgusted by it means that I can wrap them up in a sheet, which means under
Yeah,
that sheet is just Brenton Thwaites' actual legs, and we can use that for most of the film. So
yeah, yeah,
that's a really smart play.
really
Also,
smart.
with his mate, they were able to use gloves. It looks like an actual practical effect as opposed to CGI on the hands,
Mhm.
which was a really smart touch as well. And the design on those is pretty badass too.
Yeah, I feel like the design throughout the film really, really holds up.
Yeah.
Even some of the more horror aspects with like CGI. I'm assuming once we see that cow in that weird, that would all be. It seemed like that was predominantly like a
Yeah.
CGI, but it was just done really, really well. But it was shots that weren't like overdone. Like they
Yep.
didn't really throw those in there because it was like it's a long sequence. It was like this very quick it had that horror aspect. It felt really believable. A lot of it was just flashing, showing bits, having them there, and then cutting back from that.
Exactly
Um,
right.
but I think they nailed that, as you were saying, the whole aspect of you did got that leg reveal. It felt really, really dramatic. You felt for this character. It looked awesome. The polygon, and then they slowly covered it, and he was walking normally and trying to get out, and it wasn't this big grand thing until you kind of get later into the end,
Yeah.
where we see some more CGI, um, so and visual effects that they were doing. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
they
Well,
mainly that end part that we'll
we'll go into
touch
it a little
on.
bit. Yeah. Well,
That was awesome.
there's elements of the story when they're in the compound that I love. They're just like there's. Do you ever come across those like what's the word? Like not like themes, but like tropes that you just like kind of love. One of them for me is those feelings of somebody like doing something, failing, and then doing it again, and just trying and trying and trying and trying until they get it. They use that in like Doctor Who episodes. They used it in like the latest Loki series as well. But we get a little bit of that from him here too, where we don't really know, we don't realize what's happening
Yeah,
until the mattress comes off and we see the whole plan and everything's been mapped out. And this kid is very, very smart. That's what they're forgetting, or not kind of taking into account. So I love that aspect of it as well. And once we do actually get to the escape plan, you can tell how many times he's thought this through in his head.
yeah,
One of the things that I really like that kind of adds into a little bit of the kind of vibe of the film, particularly like the horror aspects of it, which we should dive into a little bit,
mhm,
is the what would you call them? Like the people that are working that are in the hazmat suits, like I don't know, like the government workers, I suppose.
yeah,
The Area 51 people.
mhm,
It's there's something really unsettling about how little violence they use.
yeah,
Uh, when they're trying to stop Nick from touching something or from grabbing something, there's not like a smack away or like a lock. It's literally just it's such a gentle grab of the hand and
yeah,
then move back. And it's
mhm,
like I think it adds to a bit of the they're not trying to hurt him. They're the
yeah,
good people. Like it's okay.
yeah, yeah.
Um what other aspects within the film did you pick up on that kind of I guess fucked with your head a bit in terms of like making things feel uncomfortable or more that sort of horror thrillery aspect because it is a big part of this film.
Yeah, so one aspect that from early on is Nick is a hacker.
Yep.
So it's brought onto that really early, and it's really kind of in that first 20 minutes as well. It is good seeing him and his mate and seeing that. that friendship bond, talking about how they are hacking into it was I think it
They
was like
got in
Harvard or
trouble
something.
for, because what was it? It was like
Yeah,
what's his name? Not Nomad. Yeah, so Nomad uh hacked into a school and put it on
yeah,
them, and then has been shitting
yeah,
on them ever since. But those early
yeah.
moments of like, oh, we're gonna find you, and then just like click the link, and it's the camera from the laptop looking at them. I was like,
Yeah. And to me, that's where it starts because that's a little bit unsettling
yep,
with the hacking. But I feel like that's the start of because it wasn't really like a horror thing. You're like, okay, this is a bit weird. And it's the same with them. They play it off. They're like, this guy is next level. Like we shouldn't really be
yeah,
fucking with him. And even seeing Olivia Cooke, how she dealt with it, driving the car. And you can see that initial shock, but she still ended up going along with them to the house and she kind of gets involved with it. She's like, this guy's taking it too far. We're gonna like we're going to
yeah.
go sort this out. And then from that aspect, it's like you just get this flip. Um, and within that flip, there is a bit that I've watched this film quite a bit.
Mhm.
You
How many
do get
times do you
about
reckon?
two. I'd be at least over 15.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. Over the 10 years, at least over 15.
Mm.
Yeah, I've watched it a few times back to back. I take a lot of inspiration from that first 20 minutes. I love those
Mm.
shots, even some of the flashback shots.
Yep.
I just love that, mainly in my own work, trying to create that emotion.
I
Um,
was gonna say they have
and
like
then
they're very like dreamy kind of quality to it. Lots of lens flares, lots of
yeah,
like silhouettes, and it just
yeah.
it looks beautiful.
And it's a film that I really love because I'm very torn with how the storytelling is done in this film.
Hmm.
I think it's one of those ones that has lazy storytelling, but also really smart storytelling.
Yeah.
That I feel like is very contradictory, but I feel like the whole film kind of does that. That's gorgeous about it is that you come into it feeling one thing, and but you get that horror aspect, and then you get this thriller aspect, and then but touching back on that horror is from that start, going in, seeing her get raised up, you get cut to it's only three shots or maybe two shots that are very, very quick. That looks like Nick is covered in wires. And it looks like it's before he gets woken up. And it looks like they're operating on him. But from that, going into this compound that they call Area 51,
Hmm.
the one thing that they focus on that I found really unsettling was the clock. He had a massive emphasis on this clock that was broken.
Yep.
And Laurence Fishburne really just plays it off as it's a broken clock. It's a massive facility. Don't worry about it. But then seeing how these other workers are very operating like a clock, like everything, and you see his plan, everything felt, and even seeing the plan on the mattress, it felt like it was a switch, like a circuit board.
Hmm.
Everything was operating like this clock. Um, and it was this whole theory that I went down a bit of a rabbit hole is that because these guys are hackers and these guys are the best hackers and everything going on, that it's like they're inside like a computer and that's how it's run. And that's why time stops because there's no time concept inside of a computer. And
Yeah.
that's why everything is just straight to the point and everything's timed really well. Ooh.
Yeah.
Um, so see a
Got to.
battery flashing.
That's on I can see a
That
battery flashing as well. I'm not sure why.
if the battery dies, I do have a backup, but
Okay.
see
You're
that.
fine.
Yes,
Yeah, I think it's just camera battery low.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. You're good.
Um, yes, but it was that whole aspect from the film was to me really, really fascinating. And it gave more of that horror esque feeling because it did. It felt very fake. It felt very like he wasn't really in a compound. These guys were kind of brainwashed. They were just
Hmm.
following this certain pattern. Yeah, and to me that was very unnerving.
Yeah.
Then there's other aspects of that film once you really dive into it. And one thing talking about his escape is that every pin pad is at eye level throughout the whole thing until he gets to the very last one that's up too high and he can't reach it.
Oh.
And he's trying to get his little thing. And it's just like this little program. And it's like they kind of knew that what was going on and they've
Yeah.
just, everything else is perfect. And you watch the whole film and it's this whole thing. It's like the one thing that's kind of wrong, like this clock. And it's just a little bit too high.
Yeah.
And those guys they just walk up nice and
Yeah.
slowly and they just grab him. There's no violence, like you said.
Yeah.
And they just slowly like pull him away like they knew that he was going to be there and that they'd
Yeah.
planned it and they were
Wow.
watching. And it was this whole thing that's just like, it just felt like they knew everything. But then that
Yeah.
goes into the end. That is, that we kind of pick up on
Hmm.
as we go into it.
Yeah. Well, I like that when they
Talking,
escape a bit, they add to exactly what you're saying. There's like this unsettling nature of like things are like almost real. It's like
yeah,
this close. It's that tiny thing that just feels off, and they go, "Look, these cans are empty," or this, and it's his friend just kind of picked up on it. I think he actually questions whether they've like pulled them into the computer or something,
yeah, yeah.
which is a very valid take on it. And one of the things that adds to the unsettling nature of the film quite a bit is not just our main cast, but like the supporting cast once they escape.
Mhm.
That vibe changes again entirely.
Yeah,
We started on road trip and let's get the hacker and yeah, sick college, and then we're in a compound being tested because we have no idea what's going on, and then we're out of the compound,
yeah.
but everyone is acting so weird. And it's
We're
not
talking about
until the old lady, the
crazy
first
mother.
one,
Yeah, yeah, so
uh,
good.
which was yeah wild, and then obviously the trucker, and you start to see. Oh, one of the things that I like was the callback to at the start. His nose starts bleeding, and they go over and like, and Laurence Fishburne's character, so Damon or Nomad, says
Yeah,
it's just a nosebleed,
yeah,
and then later the nose is bleeding, it's coming out black, and she's glitching and stuff, and I was like,
yeah,
this is very Matrixy.
yeah,
What's going on? And it seems like through my research that these are other people who were picked up and they've tested on them and then just put them out in the world,
yeah,
to just kind of
yeah,
live from there. And that's kind of why everyone knows what's going on, but they also don't. They have no idea why they're
yeah.
there.
Yeah. And there is a lot of like going on to that first scene where she's like very unnerving. She does the whole open your mouth, you'll be able to
Yeah.
hear them. And there's just such weird aspects of this film that kind of are mixing genres.
Yep.
There were so many different takeaways that I saw, and even talking about that middle part. One thing that I didn't realize until rewatching this and kind of packing it apart a bit later on is there was definitely elements where even going on to something as mainstream as like Stranger Things, where she's in that compound and they're trying to like break out of that compound in those shots. It's like I feel like there's a lot of a takeaway from a film that was done so far away,
Yeah.
like 10 years ago, had very similar aspects to that, and I only realized that watching it again recently.
Mm.
With everything going on, I was like, wow, there's a lot of shots here that are very similar to these
Yeah.
compounds, and it is building on that like that horror esque, that science fiction,
Hmm.
having his arm ripped through parts of the wall that we're
Yeah.
shooting with his mate when he was escaping, different cuts to different areas, whereas someone was in a different room in a cell and they were cleaning that out, and there was this weird orange goo or something like that, and they're experimenting. It was like this whole thing, like you said, that um, they'd experimented on different people. Some of them didn't work, and then they just put them into the world to make it seem like this world. Um, but that then world reflected where they were then taken from. So I'm like, are these
Yeah.
people that were taken from the same area but in different timelines, or were
Mm.
they dragged in and he's
Let
been
me
in a
try
coma
and
for
make
this
it familiar
long?
for you. Is he still in a coma and this is a dream? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
There's so much
yeah,
to it.
yeah. And
I
it's
think
like,
so. You go. You go.
yeah, it's like that whole thing of like, was he dragged into this and these people were dragged in at the same time? Or is it a separate occasion that they found him? Um, I don't imagine that old lady being a amazing hacker back when she was younger, or
Yeah.
anything like that, or the truck driver. But it is this weird thing of like, why are they there? Why are they so
Mm.
important? Um, and why do they have this relationship with Nomad that you
Yeah.
see? Um,
Yeah. And there are like so many like shocks within this film.
yeah,
It's all one of those things that would be like, when somebody tells you like, oh, there's a big twist in it, and then you're like looking for the twist all the time. Like I had seen just a couple of screenshots just from when I was doing promo and stuff, and I'd seen a couple of little things that I came across. I think I actually saw like an article that was like they're in a computer, and I was like, oh okay, but I didn't really know what to think going in.
yeah,
And I was watching it, and I was like, maybe that is, but I don't really know. Like it just seemed like
yeah.
someone's. It was a post on Reddit, so like, uh,
Mhm.
it does very much feel like this is one part of a larger story. Would you agree?
Yes, yeah, 100%.
Well, we were going to talk about some of the like storytelling. We've covered some of the like horror elements of the film. There was a couple of other things that I thought it did really well that were really funny a little bit, which is when the old lady's glitching and Damon pulls out the suitcase and he opens it up. You kind of are anticipating there to be like some high end tech in there, and when it
Yeah.
pans around, it's just the gun. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened later in the movie where that guy is sitting at the couch and you can just see he's got the suitcase in his hand, and I was like, that's amazing. But those moments where Damon turns into this Terminator-esque character, it kind of happens as he's leaving the compound. He's walking through and he can see where it's been shattered. And again, something great they did with the visual effects is you don't see Nick kicking any of those doors open. You just see the aftermath. It's so cheeky, and it's so important in a film where every dollar matters, you know?
Yeah.
Like, again, I can't imagine that, like, this is pretty low-key. You've got a couple of people who at this time weren't really well known, but like Laurence Fishburne's not a small name. Like, this is well past Matrix trilogy. So he's an established actor and expensive. You know, I can't imagine that he was cheap. So between
Yeah.
that, visual effects, and then equipment and other actors, I don't know how. I would love to see invoices for this film and see where
Yeah.
they put their money and why.
And it wasn't like they didn't give Lawrence Fishburne like screen time, like you said. Like
Yeah.
Olivia Cooke had very minimal screen time.
She's just
She
eye
was
candy here, bro. It's kind of
yeah,
sad. It's
yeah. It's literally and like having her in the coma and having this type of thing. And talking about like there was aspects as well. Like once you were talking about the compound
aspects.
was the
'Cause that one
compound
shot.
that one shot when they go into the bathroom.
Yep.
But talking about aspects that you were talking about, once Lawrence Fishburne kind of steps out of that compound and even
I
Olivia,
love
it's
the
like,
shot of him walking through the glass that has shattered, and he just puts his
Mm.
arms out and I was like, ooh, you didn't have to go that hard, my man. And same when he's walking down the street, the one that I used for the thumbnail, if you guys can see. It, but yeah, you were saying?
yeah, so there's a lot of aspects with that. And even the generalized when he comes out of that sewer as well, and they're going through, and you see this graffiti, and it's like talking about is like, was that graffiti already there, or was it placed there? But then she wakes up immediately when she kind of comes out. So
Yeah.
it's like, was she just in a coma because she was there, or was it because like she's now out and she can wake up? And you had this like it was like this brain fog. It's like even though she was awake, she wasn't really there. She was very much stuck. She was trying to figure out what was going on. She was still very confused. And it doesn't seem like she was just in a coma, as we know. Feels
Yeah.
like there was something else going on there, and then you
It
get that
definitely is an
reveal.
underlying thing. Like,
Yeah.
sit here, don't move, and then she climbs into the truck, and it's like, and that's one of the
Yeah.
frustrating things about a film like this not doing well at the box office is, I need more.
Yeah.
Like, left as it is, I'm unsatisfied by the ending.
Yeah.
It's like I saw some people being like, "What? All of that, and then this? It's like shocking." Blah blah. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, I can understand that. It does feel like a little out of nowhere, but then at the same time, it doesn't. Like, it
But
doesn't feel out of nowhere.
could I say something that
Sure.
is something I just thought about now? Is
Yeah.
do you think this film would have gone if we released it today, like this current, even a year ago? Do you think it would have had a better reception than it did back then?
Have you seen Ex Machina?
Yes. Love that film.
Um,
Amazing film.
we'll talk a little bit more about that later when we get to like a pairing too. But like, that is a lot of this film. A lot of those aspects of like, yeah, like it's just a little unsettling, and it's close to reality, but it's not, and it's like, and to the point of like, oh, a person hacked to get you to come to the island. Did like it's a whole thing. If you guys haven't seen Ex Machina, definitely check that out. But I will talk
Fantastic.
about that when I get to my pairing later. That being said, I think that these days there is more of a desire for original stories, and yeah, I think that there's franchise fatigue across everything. And that being said, like, you know, I've liked the new content that Star Wars has put out. The most recent MCU film, like the Marvels, like I thought it was a bit of a step in the right direction, leaning into a bit more of like just like the fun aspect of it. And at the same time, like what I found myself watching all December has been like the underground stuff, and underground stuff that's come up too. Like I went and saw Godzilla yesterday, and it's like it's a
Is that
it is a
Godzilla
franchise.
-1?
-1, yeah.
No, wow, amazing, man. Yeah.
Dude, you would love it.
I
It's
need to go see it.
yeah, it's absurd.
Yeah.
And again, a $15 million budget.
Wow.
Tiny.
Wow. Yeah.
For
Wow.
that scale of visual effects, yeah, like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's absurd. But
But
to answer your question, I think that if the film did come out this year, it probably would have like I think it would have done a little bit better.
yeah,
Um,
I think there's this whole, and I use an example that's kind of crazy. I use Blade Runner 2049,
mm,
and how amazing that film succeeded. Um, but it is a very slow paced film that I find this can be at the start when you're first watching it. There's a lot of twists and turns and excitement. But going back and revisiting this film, and it's probably shocked people once you've watched it to watch it about 15 times. It's like you kind of know what happens. You know everything that's kind of going on. You get it. And it can be quite slow watching it, but I quite enjoy that. And it's the same with Blade Runner 2049. I've watched that film many times. And that film is not afraid to hold shots. It's not afraid to be slow. It's not afraid to drip feed you
yep,
information and then leave you with this kind of twist at the end that you can kind of play on, but
yeah,
people know about. And I feel like people now, after films like that, and there's other films that have done it very well, have a bit more patience with these films
mhm,
and actually quite enjoy that aspect.
yeah,
I watched it with my partner Kat, and I was a bit shocked going into it. I'm like, it's a weird film. I'm telling you that. I'm telling you. And then at the end, she was really excited to sit down and have a conversation about it. She's like, we need to unpack this. Like, I want to
yeah.
unpack this.
I mean, that's my favorite
What I
thing
thought,
about films too. Yeah, it's like even if it were me coming to you and going, "I hate this film," and you going, "I love it," which is not the case at all.
mm,
It's a conversation,
yeah,
and that's what art should be promoting. That's the idea. Yeah, we want something to talk about. That I think that the most insulting thing a film can do is feel like it wasted your time and that it didn't do anything for you.
yeah,
Like that was, for example, for me with the latest like Hunger Games that I saw, and I just left and I was just like, I just feel empty. And you know what? I'm gonna rant to people about what I hate about it if they like ask, but at the same
yeah,
time, like the most recent person who asked me my thoughts on the film, I was just like, I just don't care. Honestly, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't give a
yeah,
shit. Like it
yeah,
happened. I wasted 2.5 hours. I'm done. Like
yeah.
where other films, like they prompt something, some kind of emotion, you know?
And
Um,
I think the takeaway from this and hearing it is it's that for this whole film, it's that unsettledness, that
yeah,
unsettling feeling that could make people leave that cinema going in and expecting something else and having this weirdly unsettling film that kind of does make you sit there and go, "Oh, this is a bit uncomfortable at
yeah,
points." But it's that whole thing of like once you come out of it and they don't give you that like that the big grand reveal that you kind of
yep,
want, and tie everything up. They do leave it very open, even though it is quite a big grand reveal. But
yeah,
it's left there, and you're just like, I kind of want more. And I could see people
yeah,
going, "Oh no, I'm happy with this. I'm fine. I got what I wanted. This was a great ride."
mm,
But other people just being like, I need to dive more into this world that these guys
yeah,
have created. I want to figure out what these other characters talking about, like
yep,
the that unsettling old lady and that.
mhm,
Um, and I think that is something that this film has done very, very well. Is that like in the storytelling that I say it has felt sometimes lazy. It hasn't given you. Oh,
oh,
this is
there
what I
goes
want
your
to say.
camera. You're okay. Let
I'll
me
fix
just
that quickly.
time code that quickly. You're all good. Guys, if you're on the live, Nick's camera just died, so we'll just fix that real quick. Um, what's our time code here? This is the fun part of like live streams. People get to see the like you peel back the curtain a little bit and see this kind of stuff. And then when you check it out on Spotify later, none of this is there because we have some fantastic editor, handsome as well. But you don't get that in audio. And guys, if you're in chat, have you seen any other weird science fiction films? Oh wow, we're getting like a found footage thing happening now too. But have you seen any other science fiction films that have prompted that kind of feeling? I know I can think of another one which I'll talk about in my pairing soon. That like it ends and you go, where is the next one? Where is the next part of the story? It feels like
Do
there's
the whole
something
like
missing.
you guys are really feeling it, you know.
That's it, dude. That's it. All right, where are we? So it's 48:22 and we're at 49:12. Cool. Um,
Just sitting kind of up here because I didn't find a tripod. I'm trying to get it back now that I've taken it off. Just bear with
well,
me.
you're all right. It looks like it's gonna sit okay there.
I think we had it like that, but I'll just now change that a little bit. Oh, this is where I don't touch things.
There you go.
Oh,
Oh my goodness. All right, we're solid. We
We are
were
back.
talking about essentially that film and wanting like more from it. Uh,
Mhm.
it does feel very much that this is one part of either a three-part series or even in two films. I reckon it could be done.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
kind of like to this point, if a book came out, I would like read the book as well. Like
Yeah.
this actually almost feels like similar to watching Dune by Denis in theaters and going like it's finished and it's about whatever halfway through the first book or whatever. Um, it feels like it was adapted from something because there's so much lore that isn't explained. What you were
Yeah.
talking about around like Blade Runner and Blade Runner like 2049 and things like Arrival. I mean, Denis does this fantastically with sci-fi. I think that we can really get into this this feeling where they feel like they need to tell us everything. And I think that that's something that big franchise films get caught up in a lot because, you know, we have to explain superpowers and this and that, and we have to explain the natures of the force and all of this stuff. Um, when you uh, essentially assume that your audience is smart enough to follow, and you just
Mhm.
tell the story as is and just go, well, if you get it, you get it. You don't, you don't. That works for some people and doesn't work for others. For
Yeah.
me, I like filling some of those gaps myself. Often, even when films do tend to explain things in detail, I still fill in other gaps. I don't know. Maybe it's the autism. Maybe I don't know. You know, like it's that's how
Yeah.
my brain works when I'm watching stuff. I love thinking about it. Uh, and in that sense, the film leaves you as we kind of get into some of like the ending portion of it. And again, feel free to bounce back to other points as well if you like. But by the time the film wraps up,
Mhm.
it feels like there's a new movie starting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
and if I were to
It
compare that
felt.
to any sort of other feeling that I've had recently, did you watch Across the Spider Verse?
I have. Yes.
So you know how it ends, and then it kind of actually felt right at the ending. I was like, oh, the credits are gonna roll. He's gonna like cut to black, and it just kept going and going and going and going. And then you get to
Yeah.
the end, and it drops this moment that you go, I need the other 2 hours of this, like now. Like let's
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
back. Let
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
This film has very much that same feeling.
Mhm. Yeah. I could see that 100%.
Mm.
And because, like you said, it's only about an hour and what we said, 37 minutes or
Yeah,
30.
47. I think it was an hour 47.
47. Yeah. It is like it's a quite a short film once you kind of break
Yeah.
it down. That first 20 minutes doesn't feel like 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a bit of that really early opening. It progresses, and then that middle part in that compound kind of just gets taken away as well. Like that moves very quickly. There are some slower parts, but the character development that you see on Nick goes crazy, and then you get thrown into this kind of third part of the film when they're out in the world. And that just felt like surreal and really quick, and you get introduced to these new characters and then quickly taken away from them.
Yeah.
And then I'd say it comes down to that last part where you feel like you're about to go into that next bit as well. And then it just ends. And you're like, wow, like, has this really just happened? Like,
Yeah.
she's, and just we're talking a bit more spoilers when she leaves on the helicopter. And I'm like, once you figure out that he runs through what seems like is a complete illusion, where did she go on that helicopter?
Yeah.
There's no sky and there's nowhere for her to go.
Yeah.
Where's her mate? Where's all this? Like, what is going on with this?
We were also saying that like um with her there is something going on.
Yeah,
Like there is something that is not right. And I've been looking into some like articles with the director and stuff, and he's like, yeah, there are questions.
yeah,
Like
yeah. And we're
absolutely
having
guys.
her
Like
little, because for the two main characters, Nick and I'm gonna go with what you say. Um,
Ollie, Haley, I think it is.
it is Haley. So he has his arms,
Yep.
he has the legs, and then you see once they're in that, I think it's that weird shop that has the fake food. You see on the back of her neck that there is that slight, and it's the same alien thing, but it's only like a slight. And it only shows there, and that's where you kind of get that there's been experiments going on. Like it's not, she was just in a coma.
Yep. It's on
Um,
everyone.
but it doesn't touch on what ability she has or what she can do, or because both of these guys have superhuman.
Telekinesis. I can feel
We
it.
don't know. We don't. But this is the thing. Like we have superhuman strength, we have superhuman speed, we have all these amazing things, and then it's just this character that kind of gets whispered away in this helicopter, and it's like they're trying to shield her, and I'm like, what's going on with this?
Mm.
Why is she the most important one? Why is she getting dragged away? Why is this the and is it because he wanted her to be, or is it because they wanted to protect her? There's these things that kind of opens up because Nick was the one trying to protect her.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like they've got her again,
Mm.
and they
It
don't go
does.
for him. So
Yeah, like as you're mentioning it, I was thinking about Dune a little bit more, and it does actually feel similar to Zendaya's character in Dune a bit as well, where like early in the film, she's in his dreams, she feels like this big character, and then he sees her, and then you're like, okay, but what is it that's special about her? And you don't get the answer yet, which is why I'm really excited for Dune Part 2. I haven't read the books. I'm going in completely blind as just essentially just as a Denis and a sci-fi fan. Like, so I'm pumped.
yeah,
Did you see they showed the first 10 minutes of that off at the Brazil Comic Con too, or SXSW, I think it was in Brazil?
I did not.
Yeah,
Believe it or not, I
they
did
dropped the
not.
trailer, the actors showed up, and then Denis played the first 10 minutes of the film. They're the only people in the world that have seen it. And I'm just sitting here like, oh my god. But I haven't watched trailers. Like, I'm going in blind. I'm doing IMAX. I'm hoping there's a back-to-back screening. But I'll get distracted
That would be
talking about
awesome.
Dune. My point is that,
Hey, that's one thing you can get distracted by, man.
honestly, fair, yeah. Uh, but it feels this is just the thing, right? This is part one,
Yeah.
and I'm so frustrated at people being overly frustrated at this film,
Mhm.
because of it being part one, and then at the same time, you sold me a film that didn't have, not you specifically, but like the creator has
No,
sold me a film and told me go and watch this, and then you've not told me that there's multiple parts. You've not had something attached to it, and that's where things kind of get messy sometimes, Um, and I don't know, it feels like we're missing something in that, and that's where like the name of the episode comes in too, because the tagline for the film is "Are you agitated?" and
yeah.
the name of the episode is "Yes, I am agitated," and it comes from a place of going, "I am interested in this world. I
Yeah.
want so much more. I know that I'm never gonna get it,
Yeah.
um, and that is a problem."
And that's where I think to me it comes back to that lazy storytelling or smart storytelling. And I think that's one thing that is really divided with this is that is it lazy storytelling or is it smart storytelling? Because there was a lot left open and some people love that. Some people really find that really, really rewarding. They love being the person that pieces things together. They love trying to figure out bits and
Yeah,
pieces and but then other people just sit there and they go, that is very lazy. Like I want and it's like this, it's like a kind of like a like you said, you've given this movie an hour and 47 minutes of your time. It's that demand of like, I need to know what's going on. Like
yeah,
you've been given this budget, you've been given this role, you've developed these characters, but you've just developed them to this point where I'm kind of left with my own judgment. And I don't want to do that. I want your
yeah,
storytelling to be as par as that I'm leaving with a full answer to everything.
mm,
And then it's something that was very, very big in the discussion when anytime you look at this is having different theories and people going that they loved where this film was going,
yeah,
and other people just going, no, it was just lazy
yeah.
storytelling. They had a really great idea here. They tried to execute it and they just fell a little bit short,
Mm.
and that's why it didn't succeed. And then other people going, no, they nailed this. This is what they wanted to do. So yeah,
Mm. It's I think of another film that kind of has the same feeling as this, but it was adapted from a trilogy of books. And I haven't actually watched the other two films in the series, but have you read or watched The Maze Runner?
I have. And
Uh,
it is a good one to relate to with this film. I feel very, very
hmm.
good. And I've seen
Like,
all the films as well for it.
I need to go back and watch the other two. Do you recommend them?
I do, I do.
I
I
like
really
Dylan
enjoyed this.
O'Brien. Dylan O'Brien is so lovable, Like,
The second one I really enjoyed. The third one really wraps it all up,
yeah.
and gives that. But the second one I really enjoyed. The Scorch.
Mm,
That's the Scorch Trials. I feel like that builds on that world a lot more and kind of
yeah.
gives what's going on.
I do have the second. I have the trilogy of books as well, but I've only read the first book, and I started the second one, and then I don't know. I
But
didn't really.
to me, that is like amazing because you could say this first one's like the maze, like they're inside this
Right?
maze, and then you come out and you see his tattoo, and it's tattooed at the top. If you notice that, so the
Hmm.
tattoo on his arm is the same. And then it's this whole thing of it looks like it's about to slot into another area of this much bigger world that
Yeah.
we're in. This alien AI world. Is it a computer?
Yep.
We don't know. And it feels like you're getting that part two. It's like it's that really annoyance I was talking about Into the Spider Verse, where they kind of leave you with that. There's a part two, and you kind of knew it was coming, but you're like, okay, now I have to wait. Thank you very much. You guys are annoying.
Yeah.
This is not what I wanted, but I will take it. But in this film, is like you're kind of waiting for that, but you don't get it. There's no. Oh, this is a second film. That's it.
Yeah.
We're done.
And I think
So
that's the hard part sometimes where if you're a like a relatively new creator and you want to tell a story and it is a full story, and you can only tell a part of it, how do you balance, I want my viewers to feel satisfied with what they got
mhm,
and they need the next one, you know?
yeah,
It's the problem in, like, for example, franchise films right now where you're constantly having to weave in these external elements, you know? Um, it's difficult to go and watch the Marvels without having watched Miss Marvel and WandaVision, like two TV shows to watch a movie. And
yeah,
so the question becomes, and I suppose the same thing could be said for like Star Wars too, where Star Wars has a lot of fantastic media outside the visual, not just TV shows and like animations and stuff, but like in comics and books and things.
yeah.
And you could
Correct.
go, somebody could in the Last Jedi go, I hate Canto Bight, it's not interesting at all, like what's the point of like this planet of like these rich people? And I could tell
Mhm,
you, well, here's a book that tells you stories about a lot of these characters and explains why that's important. And while that's true, you shouldn't be expected to look for information outside of what you're watching. I
yeah,
should be able to, with any show, and again, this comes like the MCUs and the Star Wars shows and stuff as well. I should be able to sit down and turn on a show that's season one, episode one, and
mhm,
have information delivered to me
yeah,
in that show. And
yeah,
if I want more, I can look for more, but I shouldn't
yeah,
have to. And
yeah,
that had been my gripe with MCU for a long time that I thought Star Wars did really well, where I would always tell people, like, hey, best thing about Star Wars, pick a character, pick an era, pick something you like, a genre, whatever, I'll find something for you. And
yeah,
like you won't need anything else besides what I give you. Yeah, if you go, I just
mhm,
want in this kind of character or this kind of story, I can go, cool, here's a book, here's a story, here's a show, watch, enjoy. And it
yeah,
feels less and less like you can do that with media
yeah,
these days, that you can't
yeah, sure.
just what's the word? Recommend something.
Mhm,
You know, if I wanted to recommend you the Ahsoka show, you need to technically watch a lot of other stuff.
yeah,
I feel like when I sit and watch that with the mentality of I'm just watching this, that makes it a bit difficult. And so, like, that's what I come to in with this film, where I think about it feels like there's something outside that I should have read or should have known before coming into this, and that's where the difficulty comes in the end of it. Um, and as I get to like my pairing, I want to talk about like another film there as well because I don't know if you like heard on some of our previous episodes. What we do, which I forgot to mention for you, is try and find a couple of films that are similar to this that you would
yeah,
recommend to somebody or how you would kind of pair it. You know, like a wine and
yeah,
cheese kind of
yeah.
vibe. Um,
My pairing for this film will blow your mind.
I'm
Because
so
it's like
excited.
to me, it's the whole thing that I found, and this is what I was talking about with like the lazy and smart storytelling is to
Mm,
me, it was all about cinematic storytelling.
yep.
And I felt that really, really held this film quite a bit. So for me, the film that I normally recommend when I say I love these films will be something that cinematically is
Yeah.
gorgeous, but it won't be like a science fiction film. It'll be something weird,
Okay.
but it's like it's
That's
more
cool.
cinematic
Yeah.
storytelling
Well,
because it's like I find
I was just gonna say we'll get to like cinema a la carte in just a minute as well because we're at a pretty good time there too.
Mhm.
But I wanted to touch back on any other like aspects or elements of the film that you want to discuss before we look to wrap up a little bit.
like I've touched on main things. The one thing that was talking about was a bit of the vibe that we have touched on,
Yep.
but just how it does feel like you get kind of different films within this.
Yeah. It is like a
And I
three
think
part, like very different.
yeah, and I think this plays back to kind of other films that I recommend with that is that it has this vibe that it's like you're not just getting one story, you are kind of getting a multiple of different stories, but it's how you piece that together.
Mm.
That is very interesting with it, but it is a very interesting like the vibe of the film is very grown like you said you have this horror esque, you have this thriller esque, you have all these weird characters, but at the end of the day it's a science fiction film
Yeah.
and it nails that even with the different opening 20 minutes and I feel like that's why I just love this is it's just like so unapologetically science fiction
Yeah.
in the weirdest way that science fiction is
Like Lovecraftian a little bit as well in that sense. It's
yeah
like, oh, we have questions here that you're not getting answers to.
yeah
Uh
and it's like a lot of good science fiction medium kind of does that. It's like,
Yeah.
here's a really cool concept and an idea that I'm going to leave with you,
Mhm.
and you go crazy and have fun with it. It's like I'm kind of
Yeah.
implanting that inside your head, and it's like this is the fun medium to do it. But it's like have fun with that.
Yeah.
Go off and kind of have that little essential like, oh, what's going on? Like what
Yeah.
actually happened here?
It's
And I
interesting that because I feel like it does play on the kind of human experience or fears of like we want to know everything. You know? And there are existential questions to the universe that we will never have answers to. You know, there are questions that I have that, for lack of a better word, terrify me. You know, that are so big that you go, once I start thinking about this, it's just a rabbit hole, dude. Like,
yeah
so to go into a film and play on those human fears that no other being on earth has, you know, like animals don't think about the same things that we do, you know, like it just is not a thing. We're the only creatures that have, I suppose, like consciousness of that level and awareness of
yeah
everything that prompt that fear, and it does play on that quite a bit, and leaves you a bit like, oh my god, and that will work for some people and won't work for others.
and that's where I was going to kind of leave this and
Yeah.
try and end it with is that it's such an amazing thing that once you figure out, and we're saying Laurence Fishburne, you figure out that these guys are like AI robots,
Mhm.
but these robots are so intelligent that they're playing on this human fear of aliens and Area 51, and they know about that. They know that that's unsettling. They know that, so they can play off of like, oh, we're actually the ones that have been doing this, and we're this smart, intelligent, weird
Yeah.
artificial, and you kind of learn that at the end. But it's like we know that like to hide that, we can just play on this thing that's aliens, and we can change this little footage and show this little green man or this alien figure and play on this horror, and just kind of hide behind that because
Yeah.
you are sitting there as the character, you're believing that like through the whole thing. It's like this is unsettling. Like
Mhm.
this is a bit of a weird thing. Like there's aliens going on here. These guys are trying to help, but it's like at the end of the day, you figure out that it's like no, they're the aliens. And it's like that weird science fiction twist of that
Yeah.
it's this AI robot that at the end of the day had been controlling everything. And that's when you hear that he kind of picks up the nomad backwards is his name, and it's
Yeah.
this whole thing. And it's very smart and clever, but
Mm.
I think it's that gorgeous twist of like it's that little existential, like they play on that. Like we know
Yeah.
that aliens are just weird, but
Yep.
that's what they're doing. So yeah.
Well, one of the things that I saw people kind of like fighting about online a bit was they were talking about how Nick is very, very smart, but he didn't figure out that uh, that you have to be like what the numbers add up to 51. Like, how did he not figure that out when
Yeah.
there was this? And then another one was say like, how did he not think Damon backwards is nomad? And I'm like, okay, both of these things, sure. I think at face value, there's that.
Yeah.
Often when we criticize characters' choices in films, particularly when there's like a thriller or a horror aspect, we tend to forget how much the brain changes or functions differently under high levels of stress. Like
Yeah. And I
they sit
think
there going,
the
it's very easy to be sitting on the couch going, I would have picked up that Nomad is Damon backwards, but I don't know, man. I think that it's totally fair that it's not until the last moment where everything is clear and he's like, I can feel it, that, oh fuck you.
Yeah.
You know,
But
like,
I think the thing with that is another thing that they show with his intelligence is when he's doing the puzzle, and you
yep,
can see that he's really agitated as well from the start. And it's a simple puzzle, and he thinks that there's more to this puzzle. And Lawrence Fishburne kind of turns around and he's like, it's just a puzzle, that's it. And then he breaks onto Haley because his mind is so hyper fixated on what's going on. He goes on this rant about this goes here, this color matches that, and it's like all this quick, and you can see that his brain is going a million miles an hour trying
yeah,
to figure out what's going on, going like that. That you probably skip little things that you
that's it.
see on your arm and not add it up because, and you see the big map once they reveal it, and you see him worrying about Haley so much. He is so hyper fixated on everything else around him that it
Mm,
became overwhelming to him in a point that as simple as a little puzzle to test things is like just too overwhelming, and he's trying to make it this big grand thing that at the end of the day Lawrence Fishburne telling you like, it's just a test, it's just a puzzle,
yeah,
like you're okay.
yeah.
And you're sitting there and you're like, wow, this is quite interesting. So yeah.
Mm. And I did like that feeling, particularly towards the end of the film, where you've got the lines of you know, it was you who came looking for me, and so the question you have to ask yourself is, did you find what you were looking for? I thought that was, I was like, oh, you bitch. And I like that when he smashes through the kind of veil into that void, it did actually feel very matrixy. You know, you got a bit of like green and black everywhere, and I was like, oh, is he like broken into like the code? They were in a computer, cool.
Yeah.
And then it zooms out and zooms out, and I was like, hold on,
Yeah, yeah.
what?
And
And then
then
credits.
roll credits. So
Yeah,
yeah.
but like it does balance its different tones really well, I think. Like I said, it
Mhm.
could be really jarring for someone if you're going in, particularly I think if you watch the trailer.
Yeah.
The trailer does spend a lot of time showing like the action sequences, and
Mhm.
like a lot of the promo photos have the slow-mo yelling and the fire and the explosions that kind of, if you expect that and you go into this film and what 80% of it is road trip in a compound, a little bit more road trip that's a little bit creepy, and then some action stuff at the end.
Yeah.
I think it also goes to show that you couldn't do those things throughout the whole film because of the budget.
Yeah.
And so the director's made really smart decisions here in how to, where to put his money, essentially, which is what making a film like this at this price or at this cost comes
Mhm.
down to. It's essentially you're managing money at that point. So I think it's really impressive what they were able to do with the budget.
Mhm.
I think that with maybe one more pass in the editing room to just kind of clean it up a little bit, there's a little
Yeah.
bit of probably fluff that you can chop out.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's wild, because I'm in two minds. One is the film needs to be longer, and the other is the film needs to be shorter at the same time.
Yeah.
It almost feels
Yeah.
like they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. I want to introduce all of this stuff, and I want to
Yeah.
drop the bomb. And it
Yeah.
almost feels like maybe you shouldn't have dropped so much and then given the bomb at the end and chopped it down a little bit, or you should have committed and given me a 3 hour long sci-fi epic that landed here. Give me like the Batman level unraveling mysteries for 3 hours.
Do you want me to throw in something to think about before we end this?
Yeah,
That's
for
like with
sure.
that flashback. So you know how you talked about at the start with his legs, and it could be like neurological, and um, the flashbacks kind of show him getting trampled as well.
Yeah.
He used to be like a triathlon runner, and you kind of hear Haley talk about it at the start and talk
Yep.
about this race, and it's like this. He's always about a race, and he's trying to get there, and that's the character that he is. There's certain flashbacks that I felt like you didn't really need because they didn't give anything,
Mhm.
but it shows him in this triathlon running, and it seems like he's tripped, and then people are like running over him, but you don't really see it. So a lot of people go, "Did he get trampled?" And that's why he lost his feet.
Mm.
And that's something that's like so powerful. And there's all these little things that you can kind of pick up that I feel like you said, it felt like to me a bit of a bloat, but they were the parts that I loved and stuck
Yeah.
with me so much. And like going back to the carnival, one of my favorite shots ever is him with his arms out going around this. And I'm like, why is it there? But also, I needed that. I needed to
Mm.
feel for this character and feel what he was going through and all these different things of like, he has had this part of his life snatched away.
Yeah.
And this is how he's made himself kind of get here because of this and where he was probably leading to in different things. Um, it's like it's forced him down this kind of rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And then it opens you with that question, like you said, is like, is this what you were looking for?
Mhm.
Because he's definitely out there searching for something. And that's the takeaway is like, did
Yeah.
he get what he wanted? Did he reach that area? Was it worth all the things that he'd been through and all these
Mm.
flashbacks of his life? And all the decisions he made to kind of get
Yeah.
to this end. Um, and you left there trying to feel for him as well. Like, was it worth it or was
Yeah.
it not worth it? So
That's a
yeah,
really good point. And I think that it does like it's it's the hard part where it does prompt questions, and I think that to your point, without those flashbacks and stuff, I wouldn't have as many questions
yeah,
about what's happening, where it's going, what does it mean. Uh, and at the same time, it bloats the film a little bit and adds stuff that makes it a bit more like rough, like
yeah. Tries to throw in like a bit of curveball there and tries to throw in different things that could be helping the film, couldn't be. So yeah, and that's where we always come back to that I felt with. Even though those shots were so beautiful, and I'm a big fan of that cinematography, was that smart storytelling, or was it kind of that you're just throwing it in there to kind of feel that area, or was it cut well to do that in those certain when those flashbacks came? Like, were they crucial moments where you needed it, or was it just kind of that little bit of a bloat? Like, that is very interesting as
mm.
well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like, let's jump into a little bit of cinema a la carte as we do here, as we're going to wrap
Mm,
up. So, um, with this film, should you, let's say that you were to be recommending it to somebody else, and you were
mm,
trying to put it together by combining a couple of other films or other things that you've seen. I've got a couple here that I've put together. Mine are more like sci-fi based,
yeah,
because that's what it connected with for me. But I am really interested because you teased me before. Um,
mm.
I want to hear what you would pair with this film.
So one that I pair with it that just blows everyone's mind away is because of the cinematography style. There is a certain style that I really like with cinematography, but I really enjoyed how the story was portrayed in this. I love films in a weird way that kind of whisk you out of what you were thinking you were
Mm.
kind of in,
Yep.
and then throw you into something completely different. So one film that I always recommend that is just came out. It was actually 2 years before this film. It is one of my favorite films. It's got one of my favorite actors in it, Ryan Gosling. And just going from there, it is The Place Beyond the Pines.
Ooh.
Because it's that whole thing of if you've seen that film, if you haven't, it is incredible. But you kind of get two stories in that film for the
Yeah.
price of one.
I
And
haven't seen that one.
it's very out of nowhere. So that's all I'm going to say is that it's a completely different. It's a crime thriller. It's got Ryan Gosling, Eva Mendes, and Bradley Cooper.
Yep.
Really, really great film. But you practically get two films to me. It's to me two films for the price of one.
Right.
And I feel like this is a very similar one of like kind of two films for the price of one. And to me, that is such a cool concept in
Mm.
filmmaking. You go into it and you're watching one thing, and then out of nowhere, you're like, What's just happened? Where am I? What is going
Where
on?"
how have we landed here? Where did
It,
we get here? I
yeah,
actually watched a movie the other day that had that kind of vibe as well. A film that came out this year actually called Polite Society. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've not heard of it actually. Add
It's
that to
on
the list.
Binge.
Mhm,
I would recommend checking it out. It's like a, I don't even know how to like explain it to you, dude. It is kind of like a martial arts film, uh,
mhm,
but it's hyper stylized. It's like a teenager who her sister's been married off to some guy, and she wants her sister to not get married, so she tries to stop the wedding happening, and it's mental. But by the time it wrapped up to the end, I was like, this is this is the way that the story went. Like this was the overall arcing thing, which I loved in that film because while it did feel random, it also felt like it fit because it was silly and absurd, and I was like, oh my god, whatever. So you've got Place Beyond the Pines. What else
yeah.
would you pair this film
So
with?
yeah, so that one like it's very similar. It has long shots, really well done. I just love that cinematography style. And then yeah, Blitz, go watch it. It's easy to watch as well. You can watch that one on Stan. This one's a little easier for you to watch. It's a bit of an older one, but you can get your hands on it. Um, and then I get so torn with like recommending this film within other films because there are some different science fiction films that I quite
Yeah.
enjoy that do pair well with it. Um, and one was going to be that I think you would touch on, so I will say it, is your Ex Machina. I always say it
One
wrong,
more
but
time.
I can never say it right, man.
Ex
What is it?
Machina.
Ex Machina.
Yeah, that's it.
Um,
That's it. It's
that
perfect.
Love it, dude.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I feel like this film just has such similar, and I think it's to me the pacing is where I land with this film, but also it's a cinematography style.
Yep.
I think you would have seen it with another film I recommended a while ago that is completely different, Short Term 12, but
Hmm.
they have that very similar cinematic style with how these are shot and how they are kind of created. And that's one film that I just feel also story beats and how it all works and very similar that we've touched on, but that is
Yeah.
another one that I pair very well with this film.
Cool.
It's a bit more of a mainstream one, really easy to get your hands into and to watch. And yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Wow.
The other one,
Yeah. Go.
the other one is an Australian film
Ooh.
that I love to recommend. Just going to make sure I'm getting the name right. It's science fiction. As well, and it was a bit of an older one, but it's called Upgrade. If you've ever watched Upgrade,
I love Upgrade. Yes, that was so good. You know what Upgrade did for me is I saw Venom and I was like, I hate
Mm,
Venom, and then I saw Upgrade and I was like, Venom.
yeah, yeah. So Upgrade is a very interesting one. It's I think it bases off that same, and it's a big thing that I find that I have across the board with a lot of my films. It's just the style.
Yep.
Even that opening aspect. Parts of it was shot in Victoria that I love. So
Yep.
actually down at Cape Shank. Like you see those vistas, and I'm like, wow, it's like to me it felt like home. Like you get this, and then you get torn. Like it's like you just get torn into this different world and how this
Yeah.
character deals with it, and then kind of unraveling what's going on, and then that twist at the end as well. It's very similar in a sense. So that they're the
Mm.
films that I kind of play it with. But Upgrade is one that flies under the radar, but is another science fiction,
Yep.
and I think really suits well with this. You get left with a lot of questions not answered, but also is answered.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's a
Sure.
lower budget, but they're the three that I'd pair with. So one
Mm.
completely off, and then two science fiction. So
Wicked. Yeah, no, they're fantastic choices. It does make me really keen to check out Place Beyond the Pines too. So yeah,
mhm.
Place Beyond the Pines. You had Ex Machina and you had Upgrade.
Yeah,
And just on the point of Upgrade, one of the things that I love about that film is the camera work. And like
yeah,
you were saying, like how it's shot, and particularly as we're kind of changing between places. I love
that fight scene, man.
mm, delicious, and I love how that when they're you've got like visual storytelling, right?
Mm,
And then
mm.
you've got like camera storytelling, I suppose. You know, like there's another show called Severance. Have you seen that?
Have not seen Severance.
Apple TV, check it out. There's a character that when they're in one place, they access one part of their mind, and when they're in another place, they access another part of their mind.
Oh,
And the way that
okay,
they
wow.
separate the two is with the lens. And when he's swapping between them, you actually see the shape of his face change because of how they're shooting it. And it's wicked. But another film that does something identical to how Upgrade does it is another Australian film called Talk to Me that came out this year. It's a horror film. They just added it to Netflix in Australia. But if you have a vibe for something a little more like get the blood pumping, Talk
Yeah,
to Me on Netflix. You'll love it. And cinematography from that is delicious.
yeah.
Um,
So how would you pair it after
well,
just watching it? It's fresh in the
yeah.
mind.
So I have pairings on it for a couple of reasons. One was Ex Machina, for the cinematography,
Mhm.
and like aspects of that, you know, being whisked away into a different world and just being
Yeah,
having to figure out what's going on there. Which, while Ex Machina does that a little bit less than this, it still is kind of the same vibe. But I suppose I put Ex Machina in like an Alex Garland bucket
mhm.
because this also does something similar to what Annihilation does, which is that more Lovecraftian, I don't really
Yeah.
know,
What's going on
existential,
here?
what the fuck just happened ending.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think
exactly.
that
Yeah,
probably because you picked Ex Machina, I might pick Annihilation.
yeah,
And
amazing.
then the other one that I would pick is because it made me feel the same as this film when it ended. However, I think it did maybe a little bit of a better job staying as a contained story if we never got a sequel. And that's District
Yeah,
9.
yeah.
Um I feel like by the end of it you are going shit, I want the next story, and I'm still waiting for District 9 to get a sequel. I'm hopeful, like it'll come one day.
And
Uh
they have said that it's
yeah.
he
Yeah.
he's just finished Gran Turismo though, so you got to give him some credit, man. His
That's
work
true.
is
Yeah. But I think that I find that the story beats of I am one thing and then I'm blending with another thing. I'm becoming something else.
yeah,
It touches on that a little bit, and then also leaves it open ended enough for you to go, I wonder what's going to happen next. But if you did leave this film feeling a little more unsatisfied, and you want something that is going to feel similar but might just sit a little bit better, I think District 9 is a really great choice.
yeah, it's a really good pairing. Like even playing through that because I've seen that film a bit.
Oh, I
There
love
is
it.
aspects of that now that watching like the signal close, I'm like, wow, there is actually really similar aspects with how
Yeah.
this story flows and the story progression of that character kind of coming to terms with
Mm-hmm.
what they're dealing with and how they have to kind of overcome that.
Yep. And the
Even though,
disgust when at the first point, and then it just, yeah.
yeah, and I feel like District 9 does have more time where that breathes and it does allow there to kind of you explore that a bit more. Where
Yep.
I feel like with this film is like you were just getting to him exploring what was going on and figuring this out, and it kind of just ended.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
doesn't have a conclusion with
mm.
that. So,
The District 9
yeah,
came out in 2009 as opposed to
yeah,
2014 for this. District 9 is closer to 2 hours runtime, so it's nearly 20 minutes extra, which I think 20 minutes would have made this film either 20 minutes up or 20 minutes down.
mm,
Um, and it made me think of one last pairing, which was not a movie but a TV show, because I thought if I were telling this story, um, I would probably add it as an episode of Love, Death, and Robots.
yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
could see that.
it just one of the longer episodes, maybe like 45, 50 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
That kind of that or a Black Mirror or like old Black Mirror. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that Love, Death and Robots, it would work really well if they did a sequel in Love, Death and Robots and it was animated. I'd be like, cool.
yeah.
But yeah, it feels like that is necessary. And on the District 9 conversation from before, District 9 had a budget of 30 million and
Wow,
brought
wow.
in 210 million.
That's crazy.
So in a similar
And
story, I think I could understand why a studio exec would look at this and go, "That's going to be our District 9."
yeah,
And so
yeah.
it does kind of suck that it didn't get more. It wasn't known better, you know. I think if anything, that's my biggest frustration with the film. Like I wish that more people knew about it, which is exactly what we do here, and why? Because if they did, we would have gotten the sequel, and we would have completed the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that I got to share this with you and your community, man, because it's like one that I
Sure.
was like when you were saying and I saw you post on like Instagram, you're like, I just want something weird and wonderful and something,
Yeah.
and I was like, I knew it. I was like, I've got something
Yep.
for you. I've got something that I know that you would land well with you
Yeah.
and would kind of be like that. Like it's just a fun conversation to have,
For
and even
sure.
if you watch it and you are just like not sure, it's like a film that I love is like I watch a lot of films and like for a long time, I wouldn't talk to people about it. I
Yep.
would jump on the internet and have a little look at Reddit. And this film has that little community. So even if you're a little bit more nervous about jumping in and having a chat with someone or turning to a mate and going, "Hey man, I saw this really cool film. I think you'd like it," and watch it and then having that conversation. There is people out there that you can read and like and share that with them, even if it's not in person. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's one of the greatest aspects of like films like this as well. That when it is smaller, the community is tighter, and yeah, they're more kind of readily available. I suppose it's one of those big things. But that being said, we will wrap up. This was episode number 33 of One with the Films. We're leaning into the end of season 2. We'll be wrapping up come uh, late April, early May will be the wrap up for season 2, and we've got some really exciting stuff planned for you guys as well. If you've been around for then, maybe even might see you guys in person. Who knows? Something might be happening there. But that being said,
exciting.
yeah, this was the Signal, which was brought to us by Nick. It was awesome. Nick, you want to let just the viewers know a little bit more about where they can find you and what they can expect to find if they follow you?
Yeah. So you can find me at Dreamscape Visuals. I do a bit of surf photography, but also just drone film, everything like that. And I'm slowly getting back into that hobby. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I do have a podcast that I was running with a mate that we haven't filmed in a while. But if you kind of enjoy hearing gaming news and just random stuff about film and that type of stuff, it was called Half-Assed Gamers, and that's on
Awesome.
Spotify and different areas. That was just me and a best mate similar that
Yeah.
were running it like weekly, and it was a lot of fun. But life got in the way. I went over to Japan and did all that fun type of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's why I was really
Are you guys
excited to
looking to
come
pick that
back.
back up soon?
Yeah, we will be looking to pick that back up once I kind of figure out life and sort
Yeah.
myself out. Christmas time, as you know, is
It's
crazy
really
for
crazy.
everyone.
Yeah.
But it's been a pleasure to come and join you and just chat, man, because it's such a fun thing to do, and I feel like
Yeah.
it's awesome to be able to share that with communities and everyone who's like-minded and just come together and
For
just go,
sure.
hey, like this is a cool film, check it out,
Yeah.
hear us talk about it. So yeah,
That's what we're here for at the end of the day. Literally just to like share films and talk about them. And your recommendations to me have always been great. I've always loved them. Like I saw Short Term 12. That was one of my favorite films I saw this year. So yeah, like keep them coming, man. Whether it's on
I
the
will.
podcast or not, I want more of the films that you like because you have great taste. For myself, you guys can find me at On Second Thought. Easiest ways through Instagram and then using the link in the bio to find anywhere else. But I'm on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. And I talk film, TV. Generally had a pretty big focus on Star Wars, but lately I'm just moving more into just kind of the films stuff at the moment. But we'll see what comes up. I'm just kind of following the flow of what I want to talk about right now. I just put up a video on my TikTok of all the films I saw in November. It was 15 films I saw in November, and then as of last night, I've watched 17 films in December so far. So it's a big month for me and some stuff coming up that we'll talk about. So yeah, you can find me anywhere there. For One with the Films, this episode's available on demand anywhere you get your podcasts, so Spotify, Apple Music, or any of those others. And you can find us at One with the Films across all platforms, so TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and of course, your streaming platforms and stuff too, and Twitter and all of that. So you can follow us at any one of those. Movie Man Opinions obviously wasn't with us today. He talks film and TV and lots of D&D stuff lately as well, which is really cool. And you can find him at Movie Man Opinions at essentially in most places too. So as we do in each in each episode, at the end we announce the next what's it called? The next episode or the movie that's coming up this week, as well as our guest. So Movie Man will be back next week, right now as far as I know. And otherwise we'll just let you guys know. But Movie Man will be back next week. We have a special guest coming on, a friend of the channel from the Real Lovers podcast, so Marley Loves Films. And Marley has recommended us Stardust, which is a fantasy film from, I think it was 2009. Give me 1 second. Stardust.
Fantastic film.
Yeah, you've seen it?
Fantastic film. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
yeah,
2007 fantasy. It stars Charlie Cox and Robert De Niro. Like it, I don't know. I don't know anything about this one yet. I haven't watched it yet. But if you've been following our Instagram, there was a few teasers there. So if you did guess it correctly, congrats, good work. You should watch the film and then come see us next week as we break it down with Marley. You can follow our Instagram for dates and times and stuff, so you can line that up for yourself as well. We can add something, Nick.
One little thing I love to talk about Stardust is it's Matthew Vaughn that directed it, and I always say when everyone goes, "What's your favorite like Matthew Vaughn film?" I always like Stardust because it is a fantastic film and people don't know it, and I'm like, you've got to watch it. It's interesting once you know that it's him, and then you watch this film.
I'm really intrigued, and when I've been doing some promo and stuff for it, I found screenshots that are like, some of it feels like Again, it feels like there's 3 different films that I'm looking at, so I don't know what I'm about to get into, but I'm really excited, and that's why we do this.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm really pumped. You guys can follow Marley at Marley Loves Films or at Real Lovers Podcast too. And we actually have a crossover episode we did with them a few weeks ago where I was invited onto the podcast to talk about Coco. So you can find that on our page or find that on theirs if you want to get a bit of a vibe for what Marley's like. That being said, thanks so much for joining us for the live stream if you did. We really appreciate hanging out with you guys and chatting and all that kind of stuff as much as we possibly can. We will hopefully see you next week for the live stream of Stardust, and otherwise, of course, we're always available for you on demand if you want to go back and listen to our beautiful voices a little bit later. That being said, Keegan isn't here to take us out with a quote from his beautiful friend Raglan, so that will be myself today taking you out with a beautiful quote from my friend Daglan, no relation. Daglan once said to me, "Everything is funny, as long as it's happening to somebody else." Clint Eastwood actually said that, but this works for now. But thanks so much, guys. Chat to you later.